So I'm going to share my screen because Hope did something really wonderful and posted the Let's Do Lunch recipes for all of us. They are in the Teams channel and they are on a web page. So if you wanted to find this within the Teams channel, what you would do is you need to look in the Live Well team. If you are not already in the Live Well team and you've added this to your calendar in another way, I will drop a link to our Teams channel in the chat after I'm done talking. But for the rest of you, you will go to Teams, get into the general Live Well Teams channel, and then you will navigate up to Files. And then there's a beautiful green folder that says Let's Do Lunch Recipes. And from there, you can just navigate in. She's got
Sophie, you've just been muted.
Let me unmute myself. All right, so we've got this in PDF as well as PNG formats, so the pictures come out beautifully. But you have multiple options here, and I will drop the link to the web page in the chat along with the link to the Teams channel. And I will turn it over to Hope.
Awesome, thank you so much, Sophie. So that is where you can find today's recipe. Sophie, can you spotlight me, please? All right, so now we will get started. So we are making a quick and cozy beans and greens with sausage. If you're a vegetarian, don't run away because I have some ideas for vegetarians, but then I also want to hear what the vegetarians would do to crowdsource a couple more ideas. So before we get started, I want to let you know what I've done to prep, which is basically nothing, because I want this to truly be a 15-minute recipe and to prove to you that it can be done in 15 minutes, so wish me luck. All I did was take all the things out of the fridge and kind of put them around, and I also preheated my pan, and I also washed my hands. That's it. So we're going to start by talking about our ingredients first, and we're going to start with sausage. So I'm using a pre-cooked chicken sausage today, and I mentioned last time that when we're doing these really quick recipes, it can be very helpful to have one ingredient that carries a lot of the flavor for the dish. Last time that was salsa, this time it's sausage. So that's going to save us a lot of time on like chopping onions and measuring spices. We don't have to go looking for those things because they're already here. Now, this is a fully cooked chicken sausage. If you're a more like red meat sort of person and you want to use a pork sausage, I believe those usually come raw. So if you're going to use a raw sausage, you're going to want to allow a couple extra minutes to cook your sausage. And if you start from a raw sausage, it might not be a 15-minute recipe. On the other side of things, if you're a vegetarian, yes, veggie sausage does exist. It is not consistently delicious brand to brand. So if you don't love veggie sausage, something else you could try would be like a pre-marinated tofu or tempeh. I really love the bacon marinade tempeh that's available in the fridge section. I think that one is really delicious and would work great in this recipe if you don't love veggie sausage. However, that marinated tempeh or marinated tofu that comes with the flavor already to it, they can be a little salty, and so can sausage. Sausage is a little bit of a salty food. So if you have any blood pressure issues or you're watching your salt for any other reason, sausage might not be something that you incorporate very frequently. However, when we are planning our meals, it's also important to think about all the other things that are around in our meals and what we're having with that. So if you're watching your salt and you eat sausage with a side of mashed potatoes and gravy, those are also going to have a lot of salt in them as well. So that's probably not something you want to eat very often. But for this sausage recipe, we're going to be having it with some beans and some vegetables, which don't really bring their own salt. So it's not going to be too salty. So if you can look at the salt on there, this one has 490 milligrams. That's a lot if you're eating a lot of them. If that's all the salt you get from this recipe, that's not very much. All right, so that's enough yammering about sausage. The next thing that I'll talk about is the vegetables I'm using, because I want to start getting ready to go on them. So I'm using kale and I'm using carrots, mostly because these are things that I often have. I'm just going to go wash my carrots really fast. Got to demonstrate good habits of washing my produce. However, I'm going to be a little bit lazy and not peel them because who's got time for that? Just gonna slice off the ends and then chop them a little bit. And the reason that I'm using carrots is because I usually have them. They don't really go bad very often, especially the big ones. I know the baby carrots sometimes get a little slimy, but the big ones last a really long time. So you can buy them and keep them in your fridge for a long time. The other reason I'm using them is because I enjoy raw carrots. I also enjoy cooked carrots, which means I also enjoy them somewhere in the middle. And that's kind of what we're going to get today is carrots somewhere in the middle. We don't really have time to cook them all the way. So if you want to use a different vegetable like zucchini or something like that, if you don't really enjoy raw zucchini, allot yourself a little bit of extra time. All right, my carrots are chopped, and I think that's the first step to this recipe. See if I can get it to my recipe. Yeah. All right, carrots are chopped. So I'm going to go ahead and add them to my skillet that's been heating this time with a little bit of avocado oil in it. Carrots are going everywhere. What's new? All right, they are making a lot of noise. And next we're going to get the kale ready to go. I'm going to try really hard not to burn stuff this time. All right. So the reason I'm picking kale is that it also lasts a really long time in the fridge. If it gets a little sad and wimpy, then you can still use it. We're going to cook it, so it's fine. I'm removing the ribs by kind of pulling the leaves off to one side and then taking 2 fingers and just pulling the rib out. So I'm going to use about this whole bunch of kale. This is dino kale or lacinato kale. And it's kind of a small bunch, so I'm going to go ahead and use the same thing. The reason that I've got 2 different veggies in this dish is because they are 2 different colors. And the more that we can maximize our different colors, the more nutrients we are getting in. So is it likely or realistic to get 2 colors in every time we eat? Probably not. But when you have the luxury of thought, that is a good way to make sure you're getting enough nutrients in. The carrots are still alive, everybody. It's great news over here. All right, so I'm going to show you how I chop kale to make it a lot faster and also to make it more delicious. I've discovered the secret to eating kale is to chop it really, really, really small. But first, I am going to wash it because, again, demonstrating good habits. All right, if you don't have a salad spinner, you can just do it in a regular old colander and dip out the water a little bit. But anyways, as I was saying, if you don't really have time to wash and chop your kale, you can also use any sort of what's the word? Packaged green. So either like a bag or a box of baby kale or baby spinach or power greens or any of those. Those would work also really well. No matter what green you're using, you're probably going to put a lot more than you think you will need because it cooks down really quickly. I like using grown-up kale best because it gets less slimy. I think some of the other greens, when you cook them, come out a little bit slimy. Some people like that. I'm kind of picky. I like kale because it holds its shape when you cook it. All right, so now our trick of cutting it really small, that makes it more delicious in my opinion because it makes it just a little bit easier to eat. So what I'm going to do is best I can kind of like get it into a log of some sort. And then I'm going to take my knife. It's a curved blade here. And I'm going to put the tip down on the cutting board and leave it down the whole time and not pick it up. And then with my pushing hand, I'm going to make a claw with my fingers so that they can stay out of the way of the blade. If I put my fingers flat, there's a risk they could get chopped. And that is a bad way to save time. If you are chopping your fingers, that does not save you any time. So we're going to make a claw and we're going to leave our tip down. And then we're just going to kind of push the kale through. I'm doing a bad job demonstrating. But essentially, you just kind of like walk your fingers back. And as long as you leave the tip of your knife down, you can get it into these like kind of small ribbons, which is how I prefer to eat it. So I'm kind of sort of trying to demonstrate that claw so I don't chop my fingers and then just kind of go down with your knife, making a rocking motion. So I made it into ribbons this way, cutting pretty close together. Now I'm going to turn the whole thing 90 degrees, make it back into the best log that I can, and do it one more time the other direction. So tip down, I'm going to leave my claw hand out of the way and just kind of generally chop across it. to get it a little bit smaller and a little bit more delicious. All right, there's a hair on the cutting board. Good thing nobody's coming over for lunch today. It's mine. All right, so my carrots are about half cooked, and let's see what the next step is on this recipe. Make sure that I'm following it in order. Oh, come on. All right. Oh, smash the garlic. We've got a garlic clove here. I'm using a fresh garlic because I really like the fresh garlic along with the kale. I think that's a really nice combination. Oh my gosh, we're almost out of time here. All right. Chopping my garlic in there, and then we're gonna add the sausage next. So I'm gonna just open up this package here. I think the ratio of about 2 lengths of sausage to 1 can of chickpeas is the best ratio. You can use your own opinions there, but I'm just kind of slicing the sausage into some circles. And since it's fully cooked, I don't need to cook it for a long time. Just kind of like long enough to brown it and warm it up a little bit. That is going in and not dropping on the floor. And ideally, I would cook that a little bit, but moving right along. The next thing we're going to do is drain our chickpeas. The chickpeas are doing double duty in this recipe. They are bringing us the other half of our protein, and they are also functioning as a nice high fiber starch in this meal. If you don't like beans or if you don't like chickpeas, I think it would be really delicious to use some cut up potatoes if they're leftovers from the night before. Like little cubes of potatoes, I think would be good. But I like the chickpeas because they do have a little protein. For my body size and shape, about 20 grams of protein per meal is good. So my little sausage here is 13, and the whole can of chickpeas is about 20. I cannot eat a whole can of chickpeas, so I like to get half of my protein from the chickpeas and half from the sausage. All right, so my chickpeas are in there. Again, I don't really need to cook them. They're already cooked in the can. I'm just kind of warming them up a little bit. If I had more time, I probably would brown the sausage a little bit more, but I've only got 2 minutes. Fortunately, it doesn't take very long for the kale to wilt. So I'm gonna throw that right on. And I'm putting in the garlic at the same time as the kale. And when we cook kale, or really any sort of vegetable that we're trying to soften, it can be helpful to add a little pinch of salt to kind of help those cell walls break down and to help it get a little bit softer more quickly. All right, so this is all gonna kind of wilt down there. The sausage is gonna brown. Might need a little extra time because I blabbed too long at the beginning. But I do want to talk about my toppings here before I let you go. So I'm going to top this with plain Greek yogurt. It's going to add a little bit more protein, but I also think that this dish needs a little bit of moisture or something creamy to kind of pull it together. If you don't do dairy, you could also use avocados or maybe like a vegan green goddess dressing or something like that. And then the last thing that I like to put on it is a squeeze of lemon juice. When I'm out of lemons, which is most of the time, I will do like a little drizzle of vinegar. So red wine vinegar would be really delicious, or this sherry vinegar would also be really good. All right, that's 12:15. Everything is still wilting a little bit, but I'm also curious what swaps people would put in if you wanted to make this customizable to your own needs. If you're vegetarian, what would you use instead of the sausage? If you're dairy free, what would you enjoy instead of the yogurt? So go ahead and put those in the comments. I will show you my skillet, except that it's not very cooked down. But I will add a picture to the recording so that you can see what it looks like when it's all cooked down. And next time I won't talk so much at the beginning. Thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions, I would love to hear them.
Hope, I have to say that this was really an awesome recipe, and I love that you didn't put in the garlic right away because I am a serial garlic burner. So I really loved that part of it. And I also love how flexible this recipe is. I actually made it myself with white beans instead of the chickpeas, frozen spinach instead of the kale, and sausage, or meatballs instead of the sausage. And it still tasted amazing. And we're dairy-free at our house, so I left off the yogurt.
Those are all great swaps. All right, well, if anybody tries it, let me know, and I will see you in 2 weeks for the next one. Thanks very much.